The Deep Space Monitoring Station New Horizons drifted silently through the void, its metal hull catching the faint light of Proxima Centauri. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison sat at his console, watching endless streams of data scroll across his screen. Space was mostly empty out here, and most days brought nothing but cosmic background radiation and the occasional asteroid. Lisa Campbell, the station's communications officer, was running her third coffee scan of the morning when her equipment started beeping. She frowned at the display, adjusting her headset as strange patterns filled her monitors. The signal was unlike anything in their databases. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called out, her voice tight with excitement. Morrison rolled his chair over to her station, studying the waveforms dancing across her screens. The signal was definitely artificial, but it wasn't human. Mathematical sequences mixed with crude pictographs repeating in what looked like a desperate pattern. "How long has this been coming through?" Jake asked. "About 10 minutes. It's getting stronger. Someone's broadcasting this on multiple frequencies and they're putting a lot of power behind it." Lisa enhanced the signal, and the pictographs became clearer. Simple drawings of stick figures, explosions, and what might have been spaceships. Captain Ryan Torres arrived on the bridge 30 minutes later, still pulling on his uniform jacket. His dark eyes studied the alien transmission with the careful attention of someone who had spent 15 years in deep space. At 42, Torres had seen enough strange things to know when something was truly important. "Any luck translating it?" Torres asked. Dr. Amy Foster, the station's xenobiologist, looked up from her tablet, where she had been working on the symbols. Her blonde hair was tied back in a messy bun, and her green eyes showed the kind of focused intensity that came with solving puzzles. "It's definitely a distress call," Amy said. "The mathematical sequences are coordinates, and these drawings, they're showing some kind of attack. Multiple attackers, overwhelming numbers. Someone's in serious trouble." Chief Engineer Ben Carter joined them, wiping grease from his hands with an old rag. At 38, Ben was built like the heavy machinery he worked with, broad and solid. His experience with alien technology was limited, but he knew desperation when he saw it. "The power behind this transmission is incredible," Ben said. "Whoever sent this is burning through energy like their lives depend on it. This isn't a casual call for help." Torres studied the coordinates Amy had decoded. They pointed to a star system roughly 8 light-years away, in a region that Earth's long-range sensors had barely explored. The area was known to have several habitable planets, but no human ships had ever traveled there. "Captain," Lisa interrupted, "there's more. The signal is getting weaker, but I'm picking up what sounds like explosions in the background. Real-time audio. Whatever's happening to them, it's happening right now." The bridge fell quiet except for the soft hum of electronics. Torres looked at each member of his crew, seeing the same question in their eyes that was running through his mind. They were explorers, not soldiers. Their ship, the Endeavor, was designed for science and first contact, not combat. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "according to our protocols, we should report this to Earth Command and wait for instructions. A situation like this could take months to evaluate through proper channels. By then, whoever sent this message will probably be dead," Ben pointed out. Torres walked to the main view screen, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an alien species was fighting for its survival. They had reached out across the void, hoping someone would hear their cry for help. The fact that humans had received it might be pure accident, but that didn't make the responsibility any lighter. "Lisa, can we respond to their signal?" Torres asked. "Yes, sir. If we boost power to our communications array, we should be able to reach them." "What would we tell them?" Amy asked. "We don't even know who they are or what they're fighting." Torres was quiet for a long moment. In his 15 years of service, he had always followed protocols. He had filed reports, waited for orders, and done everything by the book. But the book had never covered a situation like this. "We tell them help is coming," Torres decided. "Ben, how long would it take to prepare the Endeavor for a jump to those coordinates?" "About 6 hours if we push the crew hard," Ben replied. "But Captain, we don't know what we're flying into. Our ship has defensive weapons, but we're not a warship." "I know," Torres said, "but we're what they've got." Amy looked uncomfortable. "Sir, first contact protocols exist for good reasons. We could be walking into a civil war, or worse. These aliens might be the aggressors for all we know." "Look at this signal again, Amy," Torres said, gesturing to Lisa's console. "Does this look like something aggressors would send? They're broadcasting their location to anyone who will listen. That's not the behavior of attackers. Lisa had been quietly working on the transmission, and she looked up with new information. Captain, I've been analyzing the background sounds. Whatever's attacking them, it's big. Really big. I'm hearing what might be multiple ships, heavy weapons fire, and screaming. The word hung in the air like a cold weight. Torres made his decision. Lisa, send a response. Use the same mathematical format they did. Tell them that help is coming from Earth, and give them our estimated arrival time. What if Earth Command finds out we left our patrol route without authorization? Amy asked. Then I'll face a court-martial, Torres replied. But I won't stand by and listen to people die when we might be able to help. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The crew of the Endeavour worked with desperate efficiency, preparing their ship for what might be humanity's first real interstellar rescue mission. They loaded extra supplies, ran diagnostics on all systems, and tried not to think about what they might find when they arrived. As the Endeavour engaged its jump drive and disappeared into the space between stars, none of them realized they were responding to a call that had never been meant for them. Somewhere in the Zephyr system, desperate aliens were waiting for legendary warriors to save them. Instead, they were getting humans. 3 months of space travel had given the crew of the Endeavour time to prepare, but nothing could have prepared them for what they found when they dropped out of jump space near Zephyr Prime. The planet hung before them like a wounded jewel, its blue and green surface marred by the black smoke of burning cities. Debris from shattered orbital platforms drifted through space like metallic snow. Massive alien ships, dark and organic-looking, moved through the system like hungry predators. My God, whispered Kevin Blake, the ship's communications officer. He was 26 and had joined the crew straight from the academy, full of dreams about exploring peaceful new worlds. This was not what he had signed up for. Captain Torres stood on the bridge, his jaw tight as he studied the tactical display. The alien attackers had ships that were easily 3 times the size of the Endeavour. Their hulls seemed to pulse and shift like living things, and energy weapons flickered along their surfaces like bioluminescent patterns. How many hostiles are we looking at? Torres asked. Sensors show at least 20 large ships, reported Lisa Campbell from her station. And, Captain, these aren't like anything in our databases. The hulls appear to be organic. They're not built, they're grown. Dr. Amy Foster was scanning with every sensor the Endeavour had, trying to understand what they were facing. The attacking ship showed no metal signatures, no traditional power sources. Everything about them was biological, from their curved hulls to the way they moved through space with flowing, almost graceful motions. I'm detecting massive life signs from those ships, Amy reported. It's like each vessel is one giant organism. Chief Engineer Ben Carter was running combat diagnostics on their weapon systems. The Endeavour carried defensive lasers and kinetic projectile weapons, standard equipment for an exploration vessel. Against whatever was attacking this planet, their armament looked pitiful. Captain, we need to establish contact with whoever called for help, Kevin suggested. Maybe they can tell us what we're up against. Torres nodded. Do it. Use the same frequency as their distress call. It took Kevin several minutes to break through the interference of the battle raging around the planet. When contact was finally established, the response came in the form of mathematical sequences and simple pictographs. Just like the original message, Amy worked frantically to translate while explosions lit up the planet's surface below them. Finally, she looked up with a mixture of relief and confusion. Captain, I've made contact with someone called the High Coordinator. They're using translation software to communicate with us. They want to know who we are and why we're here. Tell them we're from Earth, and we came in response to their distress call, Torres ordered. The response that came back a few minutes later left the entire bridge silent. Amy's voice was quiet as she read the translation. Captain, they're asking if we're the Kethvar. When I told them we're humans from Earth, they asked if we were some kind of mistake. What do you mean, mistake? Torres demanded. Kevin had been monitoring more of the alien communications and his face was pale. Sir, I think I understand. From what I can pick up, they were trying to contact someone called the Kethvar. Apparently, these Kethvar are some kind of legendary warrior race. The aliens down there sent their distress call to Kethvar space, but somehow it reached us instead. Torres felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. They weren't calling for explorers. They were calling for warriors. The translation system chimed again, and Amy read the new message with growing dismay. The High Coordinator is trying to be polite, but they're basically asking us to leave. They say humans appear to be a primitive species with inferior technology, and there's no point in us getting killed for nothing. Ben Carter looked up from his engineering console, his face red with anger. Primitive? Our technology got us here in 3 months. How primitive can we be? From their perspective, we probably are primitive, Amy said quietly. Look at those ships out there. Organic technology, energy weapons, ships that can heal themselves. We're still using metal hulls and kinetic weapons. Marine Colonel Frank Davis chose that moment to arrive on the bridge. At 45, Davis was a career soldier who had served in 3 different planetary conflicts. He was built like a tank, with graying hair and scars that told stories he rarely shared. Captain, my Marines are ready for deployment, Davis reported. What's the situation? Torres quickly explained what they had learned. Davis listened without expression, but his eyes grew harder as the story continued. So let me get this straight, Davis said when Torres finished. These aliens called for help, we came to help them, and now they're telling us to go home because we're not good enough? They're trying to save our lives, Colonel, Amy pointed out. From what I can gather, the species attacking them is called the Vractul. They're a hive mind that consumes entire civilizations. The Zephyrians have been fighting them for over a year and losing badly. Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez appeared behind Davis, having followed him to the bridge. She was 32. With sharp eyes and the kind of calm competence that came from years of dangerous missions. Permission to speak, sir? Maria asked. Davis nodded and Maria stepped forward. Captain, my recon team has been analyzing the enemy ships through our scopes. These Vractul, they move in perfect formation. Every ship does exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. It's like watching a dance. That would fit with them being a hive mind, Amy said. One consciousness controlling all the ships. Maybe, Maria replied. But I've seen hive minds before on Kepler 442b. The insect colonies there were adaptable, creative. These ships down there, they're not creative. They're following patterns, predictable patterns. Torres looked at his Marine sergeant with new interest. What are you thinking, Sergeant? I'm thinking that maybe we are the wrong species for this fight, Maria said. But maybe wrong is exactly what these Vractul aren't expecting. The translation system activated again, and this time the message from the planet's surface was longer. Amy worked to decode it, her expression growing more troubled with each word. The High Coordinator is giving us tactical information, Amy reported, not because they think we can help, but because they think we deserve to know what killed us. The Vractul use bioorganic ships that can repair themselves. Their weapons are energy-based and incredibly powerful. They never retreat, never negotiate, and never show mercy. They've destroyed 12 other civilizations in this sector. And the Kethvar? Torres asked. What happened to these legendary warriors? Amy's voice was barely a whisper. The Kethvar homeworld fell 6 months ago. The entire species was consumed. The bridge fell silent as the weight of this information sank in. They weren't just the wrong species to answer this call for help. They might be the last species that could answer it. Torres looked around at his crew, seeing fear in their eyes but also something else, determination. The same stubborn human refusal to back down that had carried their species from caves to the stars. Mr. Blake, send a message to the High Coordinator, Torres ordered. Tell them we understand we're not the warriors they were expecting. But we're the ones who showed up and we're not leaving. As Kevin worked to send the message, Torres turned to Colonel Davis. Frank, how do you fight an enemy that's bigger, stronger, and more advanced than you are? Davis smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. The same way humans always have, Captain. We cheat. The War Council that formed in the Endeavor's main briefing room would have seemed impossible just days earlier. Captain Torres sat across from Colonel Davis, while Dr. Foster worked frantically at a portable computer, trying to understand Vractul biology from the sensor data they had gathered. High Coordinator Vex then appeared on the main screen as a hologram, transmitted from deep underground bunkers on Zephyr Prime. The Zephyrian was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that spoke of intelligence and deep weariness. When he spoke, his words came through translation software that gave his voice a mechanical quality. Captain Torres, Vex then said, my people appreciate your courage in coming here, but you must understand the Vractul cannot be defeated through conventional warfare. They have consumed civilizations far more advanced than yours. The Kethvar had energy shields, plasma weapons, and battle experience spanning centuries. They still fell. Torres leaned forward. Tell me about these Vractul. How do they fight? They are a hive mind, Vex then explained. Every ship, every creature controlled by a single consciousness. They coordinate perfectly, never make mistakes, never hesitate. Their ships are biological constructs that can heal damage and adapt to enemy weapons. When one ship learns something, they all learn it instantly. Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez raised her hand. Sir, how do they handle unexpected situations? Vex then looked confused by the question. Unexpected? The Vractal calculate all possibilities. They are never surprised. Maria exchanged a look with Colonel Davis. That's what I thought. Dr. Foster looked up from her computer. Captain, I've been analyzing the bioships. Their organic nature might actually be a weakness. All biological systems have vulnerabilities to certain chemicals, temperatures, and electromagnetic frequencies. The Zephyrians must have tried those approaches, Torres said. We tried everything, Vex then confirmed. Biological weapons, electromagnetic pulses, thermal attacks. The Vractal adapted to all of them within hours. But you tried alien approaches, Amy said excitedly. You used the kind of logical, systematic methods that an advanced civilization would use. Has anyone ever tried completely random, chaotic attacks? Vexen's large eyes blinked slowly. Random? Chaos serves no purpose in warfare. Colonel Davis stood up, a grin spreading across his scarred face. Ma'am, with respect, chaos is the only thing that's ever worked for humans. Over the next 6 hours, the humans outlined a battle plan that left Vex's then and his advisors speechless. Where the Zephyrians and other advanced species had tried to match the Vractal's technological superiority, the humans planned to do the opposite. Corporal Danny Phillips, the ship's explosives expert, was already working in the Endeavor's machine shop. The 28-year-old had grown up on a mining colony, and he knew more about making things explode than anyone else in the fleet. The Vractal expect energy weapons and biological attacks, Danny explained as he assembled crude-looking devices from mining equipment. They don't expect good old-fashioned electromagnetic pulse bombs made from spare parts. His EMP devices looked like they had been built by a talented teenager in a garage, which wasn't far from the truth. But when Danny tested one on a small biosample that Dr. Foster had synthesized, the organic material convulsed and went dormant. It works, Amy reported with amazement. The electromagnetic pulse disrupts the bioelectrical systems that control their organic technology. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Ashley Price was in the shuttle bay, working with her flight crew to modify their small craft. Ashley was 31, a pilot who had learned to fly in the asteroid fields of the outer system. She was used to improvising. We can't match their big ships in direct combat, Ashley explained to Captain Torres, but we can outmaneuver them. These shuttles are small, fast, and completely unpredictable. We hit them, run away. Hit them somewhere else, run away again. That's not honorable warfare, one of Vexthen's advisors protested through the communication link. Ashley laughed. Sir, we're not trying to be honorable. We're trying to win. The breakthrough came when communications specialist Tony Roberts made a discovery that would change everything. Tony was 24, fresh from technical college, and he had a talent for finding patterns in electronic signals. Captain, Tony said, his voice shaking with excitement, I've been monitoring the Vractal communications, and I think I can hack into their network. Hack into a biological hive mind? Torres asked. That's just it, sir. Their hive mind uses bioelectrical signals to coordinate between ships. Those signals follow patterns just like any computer network, and biological systems that evolved naturally don't have the kind of security protocols that engineered systems do. Dr. Foster was already running to her lab. Tony, if you can access their network, I might be able to introduce a virus. Not a biological virus, but a data virus. Something that spreads through their communication system and causes confusion. You want to give the hive mind a computer virus? Colonel Davis asked. Exactly, Amy replied. Organic systems that evolve to be perfect networks have no natural defenses against the kind of chaotic, illogical attacks that humans specialize in. As the humans worked, more of their plan began to take shape. Where other species had tried to fight the Vractal ship to ship, the humans planned guerrilla warfare. Where others had used advanced weapons, the humans would use primitive but effective explosives. Where others had fought with honor and logic, the humans would fight with chaos and creativity. Vex then watched these preparations with growing amazement and horror. Captain Torres, he said finally, your species appears to have no understanding of proper military doctrine. You're absolutely right, Torres agreed. We make up our tactics as we go along. We use whatever weapons we can find, and we never do the same thing twice. From your perspective, we must seem completely insane. You do, Vex then admitted. Good, Colonel Davis said. That means the Vroctal won't understand us either. The first test of human tactics came sooner than expected. 3 Vroctal bioships broke away from the main fleet and moved toward the Endeavor, apparently curious about the new arrivals. Ashley, you're up, Torres ordered. Show them what human pilots can do. Lieutenant Price launched from the shuttle bay in a modified craft that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and held together with determination. Her flight pattern was erratic, unpredictable, and completely contrary to every rule of space combat. The Vroctal ships tried to target her with their energy weapons, but Ashley's movements made no sense. She accelerated when she should have turned, dove when she should have climbed, and attacked from angles that no sane pilot would attempt. She's flying like she's drunk, one of the Zephyrian observers commented. She's flying like a human, Torres corrected. And it's working. Ashley's shuttle darted between the bioships, too small and too unpredictable to hit. When she was directly underneath the largest ship, she released Corporal Phillips's EMP bombs. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The organic hull of the Vroctal ship convulsed as its bioelectrical systems were disrupted. For the first time in the war, a Vroctal vessel went dead in space. Impossible, Vex then whispered. In over a year of fighting, no Zephyrian weapon has ever disabled a Vroctal ship. That's because you were fighting like Zephyrians, Torres said. We're fighting like humans. The other 2 Vroctal ships, confused by the loss of their companion and unable to predict Ashley's movements, retreated to rejoin the main fleet. In the Endeavor's briefing room, the mood had changed completely. The Zephyrians were no longer looking at the humans as primitive savages who would die uselessly. They were beginning to see them as something the galaxy had never encountered before. Warriors who fought without rules, without logic, and without fear. Captain Torres, Vex then said, his translated voice carrying a note of hope for the first time since the humans had arrived. Perhaps you are not the wrong species after all. Perhaps you are exactly the species we needed. The main assault began at dawn on Zephyr Prime, though the planet's 3 suns made dawn a relative concept. Captain Torres stood on the bridge of the Endeavor, watching as human tactics turned a hopeless battle into something that looked almost winnable. Dr. Amy Foster and Chief Engineer Ben Carter had spent the past 18 hours working on their most ambitious project yet. Using the ship's manufacturing systems, they had created something that no other species in the galaxy had ever attempted: a digital virus designed to attack biological systems. The concept is simple, Amy explained to the mixed group of humans and Zephyrians gathered around her workstation. The Vroctal hive mind communicates using bioelectrical signals. Those signals carry information just like any computer network. If we can inject false information into their system, we can confuse their coordination. But how do we deliver this virus? Asked Vex then. The Zephyrian High Coordinator had moved to a surface bunker to better coordinate with the human forces, though he still appeared as a hologram. Tony Roberts looked up from his communications array, his young face bright with excitement. Sir, I've been mapping their network structure. Every time they communicate, they create pathways that I can trace. If I can get close enough to one of their ships, I can inject the virus directly into their bioelectrical system. Colonel Davis studied the tactical display showing Vroctal positions around the planet. The enemy had landed their largest bioship near the planet's capital, establishing it as a command center for their ground operations. That's our target, Davis decided. We take that command ship and we can deliver the virus directly to their main network node. Frank, that ship is 3 kilometers long and filled with Vroctal warriors, Captain Torres pointed out. How do we get inside? Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez stepped forward, her expression calm and determined. Sir, we don't go through the front door. We go through the back door they don't know they have. Maria's reconnaissance team had been studying the Vroctal bioships for days, looking for weaknesses. What they had found was something that no other species had thought to exploit. The ships are biological, which means they have to eat, Maria explained. They absorb organic matter from the planets they attack. That material gets processed in chambers deep inside the ship. If we can get into those processing chambers, we can move through the ship's digestive system. You want to be eaten by an alien ship? Dr. Foster asked. Not eaten, ma'am. Swallowed. There's a difference. The plan that emerged was typically human in its combination of brilliance and insanity. A small team would approach the command ship in a modified shuttle designed to look like debris. Once inside the ship's processing chambers, they would fight their way to the central nervous system and deliver the virus. Corporal Danny Phillips was already loading his gear with enough explosives to level a city block. If we're going inside that thing, we might as well bring the neighborhood down while we're at it. Lieutenant Ashley Price would pilot the insertion shuttle, while communications specialist Tony Roberts would carry the virus delivery system. Colonel Davis and Sergeant Gonzalez would lead the assault team through the ship's interior. What about the rest of us? Captain Torres asked. You coordinate the space battle, Davis replied. Once we deliver that virus, these Vractul ships are going to be very angry and very confused. That's when your people hit them with everything you've got. The space battle began 2 hours later, with human ships launching attacks that defied every principle of civilized warfare. Lieutenant Gary Nelson led a squadron of modified shuttles in kamikaze runs against Vractul bioships, using kinetic weapons and chemical explosives to target their most vulnerable points. Gary, you're flying straight at that ship, Kevin Blake warned from the Endeavor's communication station. That's the idea, Gary replied calmly. At 34, he had been flying dangerous missions for 12 years, but nothing as crazy as this. These Vractul expect us to try to survive. They don't expect us to ram them at full speed. Gary's shuttle slammed into the side of a bioship at maximum velocity, punching through its organic hull and detonating Danny Phillips's improvised explosives inside the ship's body. The bioship convulsed and died, its biological systems too damaged to continue functioning. Meanwhile, Colonel Davis and his team had successfully infiltrated the command ship. The interior was unlike anything they had ever seen. Walls that pulsed like living tissue, floors that yielded slightly underfoot, and a constant background sound like a massive heartbeat. This is disgusting, muttered Sergeant Chris Walker, one of Davis's Marines. At 29, Chris had fought in urban warfare, jungle campaigns, and zero-gravity battles, but he had never fought inside a living enemy. Stay focused, Davis ordered. Amy's virus only works if we get it to the central nervous system. That means we go up. The team fought through corridors filled with Vractul warriors, creatures that looked like a nightmare fusion of insect and machine. The aliens moved with perfect coordination, but their tactics were predictable. They had evolved to fight logical, organized opponents, not humans who changed their strategy every few minutes. Sergeant Lisa Murphy used flamethrowers to exploit the Vractul's biological nature, while Corporal Phillips deployed acid grenades that ate through their organic armor. The weapons were crude by galactic standards, but devastatingly effective against enemies who had never encountered them before. Colonel, I'm reading massive neural activity ahead, Tony Roberts reported, his virus delivery system strapped to his back like an oversized backpack. I think we've found their brain. The central chamber of the command ship was a cathedral of living tissue, with neural pathways stretching in every direction like the roots of some massive tree. At the center, a pulsing mass of organic matter served as the ship's primary consciousness node. Tony, do your thing, Davis ordered, while his Marines set up a defensive perimeter. Tony connected his system to the neural pathways, his fingers flying over the controls as he navigated the alien network. I'm in, Colonel. Uploading the virus now. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Vractul. Across the entire fleet, bioships began to lose coordination as false signals flooded their communication network. Ships that had moved in perfect formation suddenly found themselves unable to coordinate their actions. It's working, Kevin Blake reported from the Endeavor. The enemy fleet is breaking formation. Their ships are attacking each other. Captain Torres seized the moment. All ships attack now. Hit them while they're confused. The combined human and Zephyrian forces struck the disorganized Vractul fleet with everything they had. Bioships that had seemed invincible just hours earlier now drifted helplessly as their hive mind struggled to process the chaos Amy's virus had introduced into their system. Inside the command ship, Davis and his team were fighting a desperate running battle back to their extraction point. The ship's immune system had recognized them as a threat, and biological defenses were converging on their position. Danny, we need an exit, Davis shouted. Corporal Phillips grinned and armed his largest explosive device. One emergency exit coming right up. The explosion tore a hole through 3 decks of the bioship, creating a direct path to the outside. Ashley Price brought her shuttle in through the gap, dodging organic tendrils that tried to grab her craft. "Come on, people," Ashley called. "This place is about to get very unhealthy." Davis's team leaped into the shuttle just as the command ship began to convulse. Amy's virus was spreading through its entire system, causing massive organ failure throughout the 3-kilometer structure. As the shuttle cleared the dying ship, they watched it crash into the surface of Zephyr Prime with an impact that registered on seismic sensors across the continent. "Command ship is down," Maria reported. "And look at the rest of them." Above the planet, the Vraktul fleet was in complete chaos. Ships moved randomly, attacking friends and ignoring enemies. Some had gone completely dormant, while others fired their weapons at empty space. "The virus is spreading through their entire network," Tony explained. "Every ship that tries to communicate with another ship gets infected. They can't coordinate because they can't trust their own signals." Captain Torres opened a channel to all human and Zephyrian forces. "All ships, press the attack. We may never get another chance like this." The battle that followed was less a fight than a cleanup operation. Vraktul bioships, cut off from their hive mind and unable to coordinate, fell one by one to human tactics they couldn't understand or counter. By sunset on Zephyr Prime, the orbital space around the planet was filled with drifting bioship carcasses. For the first time in over a year, the skies were clear of Vraktul attackers. In the Endeavor's medical bay, Dr. Foster was treating Colonel Davis for acid burns he had received during the mission. Despite his injuries, the Marine was smiling. "Doctor," Davis said, "remind me to never call human tactics primitive again." "They weren't primitive, Colonel," Amy replied. "They were just completely brilliantly human." 2 weeks after the battle, Captain Torres stood in the rebuilt council chambers of Zephyr Prime, looking out at an assembly unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Great Hall, all of them survivors of worlds that had been attacked by the Vraktul swarm. High Coordinator Vex then approached the podium, his pale blue skin showing signs of the stress he had endured during the siege. When he spoke, his words were broadcast across the galaxy through the most advanced communication networks known to civilization. "Honored representatives," Vex then began, "we gather today to discuss events that have changed the course of galactic history. For 3 centuries, the Vraktul swarm has been an unstoppable force. They consumed the Alteran Empire, the Kethvar warrior clans, and the Crystalline Confederation. Billions died, and we believed that nothing could stand against them." Torres felt uncomfortable with the attention focused on him and his crew. They had come to help, not to become galactic celebrities, but he understood the importance of what Vexa then was saying. Vexa then continued. "A distress call meant for the legendary Kethvar was received instead by a species we had never heard of. A young race called humans, from a world they call Earth. These humans came to our aid with primitive weapons, chaotic tactics, and a complete disregard for conventional military wisdom." Dr. Amy Foster sat in the front row with the rest of the Endeavor's senior staff, trying to process everything that had happened. Her research into Vraktul biology had led to the development of the virus that broke their hive mind, but she knew that discovery had only been possible because of human creativity. "The results speak for themselves," Vex then said, gesturing to a holographic display that showed the Vraktul fleet positions before and after the battle. "In one engagement, humans accomplished what our most advanced civilizations could not achieve in centuries of warfare. They didn't just defeat the Vraktul, they completely disrupted their ability to function as a coordinated force." The assembly hall erupted in discussion as representatives from different species tried to understand how such a thing was possible. Torres had heard these debates many times over the past 2 weeks, and the conclusion was always the same. It should have been impossible. An elderly representative from the Alteran survivors stood to speak. Her species had been among the most advanced in the galaxy before the Vraktul found them. With energy weapons and defensive shields that made human technology look like stone tools. "High Coordinator," she said, "my people developed quantum-coherent energy weapons specifically to fight the Vraktul. Our shields could deflect their bioplasma attacks, and our ships could outmaneuver theirs in space combat. Yet we fell in 6 months. How did humans with chemical explosives and kinetic weapons succeed where we failed?" Torres looked to Dr. Foster, who stood to answer the question. Over the past weeks, Amy had become the closest thing to an expert on human military effectiveness that the galaxy possessed. Honored Representative, Amy began. Your people fought the Vraktul the way advanced civilizations fight wars, with superior technology, logical tactics, and coordinated strategies. The problem is that the Vraktul had evolved to counter exactly those approaches. They were a hive mind designed to adapt to and overcome organized resistance. And humans are not organized? Asked another representative, this one from a species that communicated through color changes in their crystalline bodies. Colonel Davis, who had been quietly listening from the back of the hall, stepped forward. His injuries from the command ship assault were still healing, but he refused to miss this discussion. Ma'am, with respect, humans are barely organized on our best days, Davis said, drawing surprised laughter from some of the alien representatives. We argue with our own commanders. We change tactics in the middle of battles, and we use whatever weapons we can find rather than what the manual says we should use. That sounds chaotic and inefficient, observed a Kethvar survivor, one of the few members of the legendary warrior race to escape their homeworld's destruction. It is, Torres agreed, standing to join the discussion. Human military doctrine is based on improvisation, individual initiative, and the assumption that no plan survives contact with the enemy. We train our soldiers to think independently, even when it contradicts orders. From a galactic perspective, that makes humans sound primitive and undisciplined, Vex then commented. Exactly, said Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, who had been awarded the Zephyrian Star of Valor for her actions during the battle. The Vraktul hive mind had encountered every type of organized resistance the galaxy could produce. They had never encountered unorganized resistance. Dr. Foster activated a holographic display showing battle analysis data. The key difference is predictability. The Vraktul could calculate and counter logical military responses because logic follows patterns. But human creativity and chaos don't follow patterns. We made decisions that no rational computer or hive mind would ever make. You flew shuttles directly at ships 50 times your size, the Kethvar survivor pointed out. You used mining explosives as military weapons. You infiltrated an enemy ship by allowing it to swallow you. These are not the actions of a sane species. Lieutenant Ashley Price, who had somehow survived 3 direct ramming attacks during the battle, smiled at that comment. Sir, you're absolutely right. But insanity worked. The discussion continued for hours, with representatives trying to understand how human tactics could be so effective. The conclusion they reached was both simple and profound. The galaxy had become so advanced, so logical, and so predictable that it had forgotten how to be unpredictable. There is another matter we must discuss, Vex then said as the formal session began to wind down. The Vraktul swarm may be broken, but scattered groups of their ships still threaten worlds throughout this sector. The question facing us is, what do we do now? The answer came from an unexpected source. Communications specialist Tony Roberts, the youngest member of the human crew, stood up from his seat near the back of the hall. If I may, sir, Tony said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. The virus we used to break the Vraktul hive mind is still spreading through their communication networks. But it's not just causing confusion anymore. It's teaching them to think independently. What do you mean? Asked Vex then. Some of the Vraktul ships we've monitored are starting to act like individuals instead of parts of a collective, Tony explained. They're making different decisions, pursuing different goals. A few have even tried to communicate with us. The implications of this revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. The Vraktul swarm had been feared not just for their military power, but for their absolute unity of purpose. If that unity was breaking down, it changed everything. Captain Torres, Vex then said, what does Earth intend to do about this situation? Torres had been dreading this question because he didn't have an answer from his superiors back on Earth. The Endeavor had been out of communication with home for months, operating on their own initiative in a situation no human command structure had ever contemplated. High Coordinator, Torres said carefully, Earth doesn't know what we've done here yet. We came on our own initiative to answer a distress call. I can't speak for my government's official policy. Then speak for yourself, urged the Kethvar survivor. What do you think humans should do? Torres looked around at his crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that had carried them through the impossible battle against the Vraktul. They had come here to help and their job wasn't finished yet. I think we should stay, Torres said finally. Not to conquer or to impose human values, but to help other species find their own ways to deal with chaos and unpredictability. The galaxy spent so long becoming advanced that it forgot how to be adaptable. Maybe we can help change that. The proposal that emerged from the assembly was unprecedented in galactic history. An alliance would be formed not based on shared technology or similar cultures, but on the principle of diversity itself. Human military advisors would work with other species to develop new tactical approaches. In return, advanced alien civilizations would share their scientific knowledge with humanity. Dr. Foster would lead a research initiative to study the evolving Vroctal remnants, trying to understand what happened when a hive mind learned to think as individuals. Colonel Davis would establish a training academy where alien warriors could learn human-style irregular warfare techniques. As the assembly concluded, Vex then approached Captain Torres personally. The Zephyrian leader looked older than he had before the crisis, but there was hope in his large, dark eyes. "Captain," Vexes then said, "when we sent that distress call, we were hoping for salvation from the legendary Kethavar. Instead, we received something we never expected. Teachers." "Teachers?" Torres asked. "You showed us that advancement and sophistication can become weaknesses if they make us too predictable," Vexes then explained. "You reminded the galaxy that sometimes the best solution is not the most elegant one, but the most unexpected one." 6 months later, the Endeavor led a small fleet of mixed human and alien ships as they departed Zephyr.